Assalamu alaikum. Hello everyone. This is Zain Tasneem. I'm currently working as an assistant professor in the Department of English at Shah Jalal University of Science and Technology in Bangladesh. The topic of my presentation is peer assessment in oral presentation, perceptions from the ELT classroom. So this is the outline of my presentation. I'll introduce the topic by stating the purpose and research questions. Then I will move on to the literature review, methodology and findings. And last of all, I will talk about the limitations of the study along with its conclusion and implications. Peer assessment, or alternatively known as peer feedback, is a very popular and innovative evaluation technique in the field of tertiary education. Presentation is a very crucial task of any academic or business domain. It is emphasized in the academic curriculum, and this skill is taught to develop the communicative competence of students. Forget and Richardson have opined that oral presentations not only benefit the speaker or the presenter but also the audience. We have the opportunity to learn from the material and from the observation. This is a sample of presentation evaluation form which I have customized and I have designed to evaluate my students in their presentation, and I also use this form for peer evaluation process also. This is another sample of presentation evaluation form which can be done by peers, and I have collected it from the internet, and teachers can design and customize their own presentation form according to the choice and convenience. The main purpose of the research is to find out the potential benefits and challenging issues of peer assessment in oral presentation tasks perceived by the language learners. It also intends to suggest and analyze the ways or strategies to carry out peer assessment in other speaking activities along with presentation. These two research questions are posed to conduct the study. The first one is about identifying the benefits and limitations of peer assessment, and the second one focuses on the guidelines or the recommendations of using peer assessment in presentation. This research is an exploration about the prospects of peer assessment in presentation class. It can show a path to the teachers who are really interested to make students participative and contribute more in academic evaluation. It also will inspire students to realize their learner autonomy, because by assessing filaments, they will have scope to judge their own performance in presentation. In this way, a new dimension of language assessment and peer relationship will evolve in the learning environment. Moreover, the study will encourage both teachers and learners to establish rapport and mutual understanding to evaluate other activities and tasks. There are a lot of research studies which have been conducted more specifically on the issue of peer feedback in oral presentation skills. For example, Reinders and Lazaro have mentioned benefits of peer assessment. For example, it fosters autonomy and collaboration skills and enables students to understand and examine their own learning. Similarly, peers and others also concurred the fact that peer assessment encourages students to become active participants in managing their own learning. And Verkade and Richardson also found out that peer assessment successfully increases the attention to each other's talks and thus increases the motivation of many students in the talk preparation. Based on a case study, voice survey generated a range of student perspectives about peer assessment and the particular version of assessment used in her effective public speaking course. Sugang and Suryani also discovered that accountable presentation-based learning encourages all the students, either when acting as a presenter or as an audience, to be actively involved in the learning process. Najat and Mahfoud also investigated into the effectiveness of peer assessment, which highlights the fact that EFL students' involvement in assessing their own presentation and also the peers' presentations can enhance their motivation to learn. Some researchers also show concerns about the complications of peer assessment. For example, Cheng and Morin opine that some students may not feel comfortable to evaluate their peers. Similarly, Nigel and Pope also explained that peer assessment can be considered to be stress-creating equipment for students. Langen and others consider gender bias to be a very important issue in peer assessment because it affects the peers in their presentation evaluation. White also pointed out some other concerns, for example, the influence of friendships or solidarity among the students, which ultimately can lead to unfair assessment or misassessment. Qualitative research approach was used to explore the topic. The study was conducted with 50 undergraduate students of a private university in Bangladesh. Among them, 28 students were males and 22 were females. They were studying different subjects such as English, engineering, business, physics, Bangla, political science, etc. The non-English majors had a compulsory English language course. More than 80 students showed interest to participate in the research, but 5 to 8 students were randomly chosen from each major based on their interest and cooperation. A structured interview questionnaire was used to conduct the research. There were about 18 open-ended questions which required impromptu and solid responses from the participants. It was a focus group interview which was conducted in multiple slots. The interview was taken in 10 groups consisting of 5 members each. It took around 16 days to manage the interview sessions and collect data from the participants. As previously mentioned, data were collected from the students through the interview questionnaire. Their opinions and responses were recorded through mobile phone. On some points, notes were taken. The participants were involved in critical discussion and argument when they were asked some particular questions. Every interview session lasted for 2 to 3 hours. The data were then analyzed according to different themes generated from the participants. Based on the frequent concepts or ideas or common opinions and even different or unique responses, the collected data present the benefits, existing problems, and guidelines of peer assessment in oral presentation skills. After collecting and analyzing data, the findings have been presented based on 3 aspects: benefits and challenges of peer assessment and some practical guidelines for implementing it in communicative tasks, including presentation. The participants have mentioned various positive aspects of peer assessment used for presentation. And one of the major benefits of peer assessment is that it promotes learner autonomy. Almost all the participants agree on the issue of learner independence, which is promoted through peer assessment. When students get the chance to evaluate their peers, they feel an urge to take charge of their own learning. Every learner assesses and gets assessed by peers in presentation, which make them become aware about their learning process. And you can see one of the opinions presented by the participant regarding this benefit. Another benefit can include that peer assessment builds self-confidence among the students. Assessing fellow mates provides an opportunity to develop self-esteem and confidence. Peer assessment builds a sort of pride and inspiration among the students. Learners often feel motivated to contribute in the class activities by not only performing them but also evaluating them presented by their peers. One of the most important benefits of peer assessment is that it develops content and organization of presentation. Good content and organization is one of the main criteria of an effective presentation. As class presentation is open and visible to everyone, learners are exposed to different contents and presentation patterns of various topics. One of the students have talked about how peer assessment helps to improve the content and organization of the presentation. You can see the evidence from the statements of one of the participants. Peer assessment also develops accuracy and fluency in English. Interestingly, most of the participants pointed to the fact that peer assessment helps a lot to develop accuracy and fluency in presentation. Students observe others' presentations and analyze their own, and therefore pay more attention to correct pronunciation, word choice, grammar, and oral fluency. Peer evaluation makes the learner to be grammatically accurate and fluent in verbal communication. Peer assessment develops collaborative skills of the students. During the assessment process, mutual respect and cooperation among the peers are developed. When students assess their classmates, they feel a sense of responsibility to fulfill. They can support each other in the pre-presentation and post-presentation stages by discussing their strengths and weaknesses during the talk. Thus, peer collaboration and solidarity grow through the assessment procedure. Peer assessment gives learners a wide variety of feedback about the presentation because they have the chance to analyze every bit of presentation, and in order to improve one's presentation, feedback must be provided analyzing all the aspects and criteria of presentation, and peer assessment serves this purpose very well. If one peer misses a point, another adds to it. So it really helps to grasp a wide variety of feedback options. There are some challenges in conducting peer assessment in presentation which are quite evident. Some of the potential complications are elicited from the participants. One of the complications is bias and hostility. Many participants have mentioned the issues of partiality and negative attitude towards the presenter. If anyone is biased or holds any kind of fondness or hatred to the presenter, suitable feedback cannot be provided. Some students may show positive comments on the presentation form out of friendship or just sort of favoritism. Some may put rude or any negative or illogical comments just because the presenter is not liked by them. For example, a participant has expressed her participation in the following way. Thus, bias and discrimination or favoritism bring negativity to peer assessment. One of the complications is the lack of knowledge and training about the peer assessment. If the students do not have proper or sufficient knowledge about the topics being presented by their peers, they cannot judge them properly. Moreover, lack of training for peer assessment fails to bring the desired results. There's always a chance of misassessment unless learners are guided about the rubrics and checklist of presentation. Many students can have anxiety issue and lack of ability about assessing their peers. Some students become anxious during peer evaluation, and as a result they cannot even perform well. They may find ridiculous or unnecessary negative comments which can prove to be highly demotivating to continue their task. It creates a lot of tension and stress among them. Besides, some students may not feel comfortable assessing their peers. They may not rely on each other's assessment as well. Lack of interest and sincerity about the assessment procedure can fail to benefit learners in presentation. Some of the participants have pointed out that their classmates may not be very interested or sincere enough to assess their presentation or any other task. They may take it as a fun or just put very generic comments on the presentation. They are not even serious to make comments or take their peers' comments for further improvement. The existing difficulties or problems about peer assessment can be minimized if these following recommendations or guidelines are implemented in a proper manner. First of all, learners should get valuable instructions and training of peer assessment. If peer assessment is to be successful, students should hold a positive attitude towards it, which can be possible through proper guidelines given by the teacher. Frequent peer assessment can be useful because it always keeps the learners to remain on track. In order to get the outcomes of peer assessment, a considerable amount of time is needed to analyze the comments and make improvements. Scaffolding can be used to make the peer assessment effective. Learners can provide guidance or suggestions or even some other guidelines to the peers how to improve presentation skills. Anonymity should be maintained in peer assessment because it protects learners from being influenced by any particular or special peers' judgments or comments. There is a demerit of anonymous assessment because it does not identify the assessor, and as a result, learners can misuse it. Random or illogical remarks may be put on easily. So teachers can reduce this problem by making it non-anonymous on several occasions if needed. Along with particular comments or remarks in peer assessment form, grading criteria can be included. Teachers can analyze and that compare the grades given by the peers and can provide the final version of marks or grades to the presenters. Moreover, the teacher can encourage the presenters and the assessors by announcing the best assessor and the best presenter of the week. Virtual peer assessment can also be conducted for presentation or other communicative tasks. Students can post comments or suggestions on online prescribed form. It adds a new dimension to the manual peer evaluation, which saves both time and energy, and it is very effective for both small and large classes. There are some limitations of the research study. This study was conducted with a very small number of participants from a private university. The number of students in the private universities of Bangladesh is relatively low per group or section. So peer assessment is very effective to a large extent for such type of small class size. This research does not include the students from public universities where the class sizes are very large. As a result, the findings cannot be applied in case of public universities. Moreover, quantitative approach along with the qualitative one could have justified the findings of the research more accurately. Only open-ended interview questions may not be sufficient to support the research. Statistical data or case studies could have been used to gain more knowledge or insights about the topic. And above all, the findings cannot always be reliable or applicable in similar contexts. This is the list of the references which I have used in my research paper. You can go through it. These are the interview questions which are asked to the participants. Thank you so much for listening to my presentations with patience. I'm welcoming questions and would like to answer the question.